7 o'clock. So I am going to call the meeting to order. If everybody could please stand for pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Public comment. Okay, hearing none. Approval of minutes. So you all have.
It should be, I know we had a set from, forget when.
Two from Jamie,
Yeah.
yes, and the set from.
That
previous
table, right, so those.
Jamie is having trouble connecting, so we need to pay attention for about 10 minutes or something.
Okay,
So can we wait it? Can you, us, come in?
can we table the minutes then for? Sure.
Yes.
Until we'll
5 minutes.
down
Yeah.
to the.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Technical problems. Jamie's having issues connecting, so she's the clerk. Rather than.
I'll take minutes there.
It's being recorded though.
It is being recorded. We could do it.
You can go forward.
Yeah, we can just.
We have easy access to the videos.
Oh, yeah, I can
Okay.
send it to her tomorrow. So, actually, you know what? In that case, because I can send it, I'll record who made the motions.
That's all.
Can I get a motion then for the minutes to move back to the minutes?
Yeah, sure. So moved.
Yes. Okay,
I'll approve the minutes as presented.
so Eric moved, you seconded, Joel.
Just.
Any corrections, comments?
No.
Okay. In that case, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, yes. Moving forward slightly to refunds. Pass my copy of the minutes. There is. Up here. Got it?
Right.
Oh, okay. I don't know what happened. Mind if I read off that? Sure can. Make a motion to approve the following refunds. M. Kara Beinikoff, 21 Whitewood Road, in the amount of $357.73. M. Carey, 53 Green Hill Road, in the amount of $28.97. R. Millette, 538 North Roast Meat, in the amount of $9.52. R. Gonzalez Souza, 85 Aldersbridge, $45.87. M. Infanta, 83 Beal Hill Road, $44.49. M. Langer, 485 Route 148, $11.63. Cool. I get a second. Second. Okay. Discussion on refunds. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now the part everybody's here for. Open the bids for pickleball courts.
Where's Jackie tonight? She should be here.
I know. Where's the rest of the game?
Hey,
Looks like it's a.
quiet in the peanut gallery. Order in the court. So- The first bid is Martin Naviero Contractor. Naviero. There's one with-
Is that the one from Bradford?
Second, find it. The amount is $268,096.
268.
096.
096.
06.
Right up here.
Next up is Isano Brothers Incorporated. Says
MAR, Marson? Is that it?
NAI.
MAI.
Okay. The amount is $103,000.
Great.
Great. Finally. Hinting tennis. Hinting tennis. So it's taped and. It's penny.
Two 68 concrete. Huh? 268 concrete.
$137,900.
137,900.
Yep. All right. Okay, that is all three bids. I'm gonna pass these along
And there's too
to
much money on the table.
Park and Rec.
Right, that spelling.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. If you're only here for that, feel free to leave.
Yeah.
Are we going? I mean, you can say. Thank you. Yeah, you're right. To the next, I'm gonna get the shipwreck. I think we're gonna get some champagne, aren't we?
Well, don't you have a meeting right in 20 minutes?
We got. It's still happy. hour.
Okay, fine.
Come on, let's go.
I had a rule, don't drink an hour before meeting and 2 hours after, so. Yeah, no. In case you thought of something. All right, moving on, department reports. You should have department reports within your packet. If they're not in there, so I'm not, oh, no, they are in there. Okay, I was skipping by. That's why I couldn't find that thing. If you have any questions, direct them to the appropriate persons. Again, this is just to provide you an overview of the business of the town in the last month. Or you can ask me the questions and I'll forward them to the appropriate part. That said, hearing no questions, appointments. So we have 2 appointments. The first is Shawnahan as assessor. And the second is Cheryl Fine to Committee on Aging. So I'll make a motion to appoint Shawnahan as the assessor for the term beginning April 1st, 2025 and concluding March 31st, 2026.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Carries unanimously. Second, Cheryl Fine. I would like to make the motion to appoint Cheryl Fine to the Committee on Aging for a term beginning after this meeting and concluding on December 31st, 2025. I should be more specific. Her term would begin on
On
January 1st, 2025. This is a reappointment.
Yeah.
That's Committee on Aging.
So,
Committee on Aging.
Yeah, just like this memo doesn't include the committee.
Oh, yes, Committee on Aging,
Verbally you said it, but just
right. Well,
get that for the record.
yeah, I'll fix that for the memo. I have to present it to Dawn tomorrow anyways.
So moved.
Okay. I made the motion, Jolie seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Are you in favor or against?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
It looks like Jamie's on. I don't know if she's.
Yeah, she's.
She's muted, but she's there. Hi, Jamie. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up, budget. Start with the current fiscal year. We are operating within expectations. I know everybody always wants to start asking this time of year, what do we look like we're gonna close out at? I'm not gonna ask that question because it is too soon to know where we're going to close it out at.
Yeah, we're not gonna dramatically not need the, when the mill rate was set for the year we're in, we said we just voted to put 1.5 of the fund balance towards mitigating a mill rate increase. So it looks like we're gonna need a good portion of that.
Okay.
So we're coming in as expected,
As expected. Okay.
Based on the report you sent last Wednesday, we're at 72% of expended funds, but I'm only looking at you because that's,
I
Trying to
don't remember
remember.
off the top of my head.
yeah. I don't
Because
expect you
there's
to
two,
remember.
when we get to the end of the year, instead of looking at, just want to make sure you're not comparing actuals to budget, because that becomes something I push to the side and it's just revenue to expenses.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything we should be aware of that's kind of looking off or odd? How are we-
Nothing that we haven't
Nothing.
been talking about all along.
Okay.
I don't want to say the S word, but how are
The
we
S
doing?
word is coming in. If we don't have any more storms and
Oh,
if we've topped off the salt and the sand, we're gonna come in over budget, but under what he originally asked for last year. So,
Yeah.
Okay, so over budget on snow.
yeah, but that's slightly.
But just,
That's if there's no more storms. If there's
Okay.
more storms, then we're over
Okay.
it.
Do you know how much we're over by now, just off the top of your head?
I think we're break even. We're about 175 and that's what we budgeted. I've got a pending salt invoice I'm waiting on.
there was discussion a few months ago that Parmalee was. Didn't they?
They're over, yeah, but they're
right,
over.
But we knew
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
A while
And
ago.
that was all mechanical work and repairs.
And their budget was 10,000 and they're probably gonna come in at 14 or 15.
Otherwise, their bills have been normal. to what
Right,
they
now
would
it's
normally
just, it's just sort of the standard internet and portalets and
Got it.
garbage pickup
So no
Yeah.
more
and then
major-
Eversource.
Yeah, the Eversource bill that everybody got at home, we also get, so.
Mhm.
And it is sugaring time, so we'll have a little blip.
Yes.
We always have a little blip in January, February.
Electric boilers, huh?
Either that or the lights, I don't know what it
Lights
is.
are
but they're
burning,
blip.
it's all the burning wood there.
I
Yeah.
know, but
I think they were cutting wood to burn
We're
it.
burning wood.
Yeah.
well, they're burning something else too.
Maybe lights or something, who knows, yeah, something.
Process has been explained to me. I don't remember the details of it because all I know is the
Okay.
end product is delicious. All right, moving on to, if there are no other questions, to budget 25-26. So what you have before you is the latest and greatest version
Right, as of today.
as of today. As of Gina and I talking about it as of noon today, though I think you printed it out at 3. So, I'm gonna start with capital. Just to go over some of the things that we have by consensus added or removed.
Mhm.
So in capital, I'll note that we have added for the resident state trooper, the flock safety Falcon cameras. Those are the license plate reader cameras that are requested.
And that's a little bit lower price than we had talked about
Yeah.
at the last meeting, or.
We got a better quote.
Was that the meeting? You guys were
Yeah.
at that meeting or it was not?
I was,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so yes, it's a lower price than what.
So it recorded it somehow, like,
he
and that's for-
Came back, it was a couple of days later and
Yeah.
said that the quote was high and that.
and that's 4 of them?
Yeah.
Four, yeah,
And that's a year, that's a,
that,
that's a-
that's
this
the
cost
setup
is
in the
a-
year, that's
okay. And then do we contract by the year or?
by the year.
Okay, so that's,
So there'll be next year's operating, there'll be a
Yeah,
support.
but we don't know
So
what
is it-
that cost.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not
not
like this will be
14.6,
this
it's
cost
gonna
for
be
3
each
years.
year.
It'll be like, that's
Hold
our
on,
first
one
year.
question I had.
That's the units and the service.
The service.
Next year, I think it's
Just the service.
$10,000 a year going forward. I
That was
believe
my
that's,
question, the service.
Yeah.
Per year, did
Yeah.
it give us a
And-
long-term rate or is it just a 12-month rate?
I'd have to dig into it. I don't remember the exact details, and I think it's
So it's a
also.
subscription?
No. It's not public speaking time.
Question.
So, one aspect of it is a subscription model.
Yeah.
It's part of the state contract, so that is one factor in reduced cost,
Mhm.
to the town. I did have a video call with one of their, customer representatives who explained, I asked all the questions.
Mhm.
Because I know one of the questions that came up was related to FOIA and how long data is stored.
Mhm.
He was gonna get back to me with a more specific answer, but he believes that it is in the contract with the state of Connecticut and it is a 30-day. They hold on to, the images or video as
Got it.
is.
The trooper also suggested that it might all be completely, police kind of things are completely not subject to FOI. That's not true.
That's not true.
Because we
So-
see that on the news all the time,
Yeah.
don't we? Yeah, I don't know,
And-
something was not subject, he thought, to FOI.
I'm sure there are carve outs, but you
Yeah.
would have to look at
And
what,
the data is cloud-based?
yes.
Yes,
So did we dig into, because to me, as we already discussed with Rich Mulhall, there's already kind of a lot of significant investment going on, with the state trooper. And there was that need for the enforcement radar cam. So I guess what's gonna help me here is if we pull the trigger on this 14.6, what are we on the hook on, per year, moving down the road here?
Mm.
Do we know that?
10.
So 10,000 per year moving forward
Yeah.
Right.
to have these cams.
And I
Okay.
think it's in the materials that.
I
the only
thought
thing-
so.
Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
be in the materials that
Yeah.
we
And I think
had for that meeting, but also, but know that the initial $20,000 number or whatever it was is only the 14.6
It's the
now.
install, okay,
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
it, that's what I was just curious on the, it's like you sign up for cable or something,
Yeah.
say, 12 months you get this price, but
Yeah.
then all of
Yeah.
a sudden, 13 months it doubles.
The state of Connecticut is many things, but
Because again,
things like this,
subscription based, it
Yeah.
becomes like,
right.
That was all,
you
it
know,
is what it is,
And the other thing to remember about the subscription is that it includes maintenance. It includes, we're not owning the cameras. We're not responsible for
Sure.
maintaining them. If somebody drives a truck through them,
they fix them.
And I don't think, but we'll find this, confirm this, but I don't think it's our record.
Right.
It's the state's record.
that's correct.
So it's really their headache is the
Got it,
FOI.
to do all the FOI, so it's
Yeah.
not gonna cause like massive administrative
Right.
work for us.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Because that was one of the other questions that we had was, where's the FOI burden lie?
Correct.
It is on the state. This is part of a state program. Okay. But I'll be talking more about the state later. So moving on from that, we kept the mulch head and triaxle for hauling.
Mhm.
Mulch head in the amount of 36,000 and the triaxle in the amount of 325,000.
Mhm.
We had been discussing removing those and or delaying them for another year, but just to play it on the safe side,
Mhm.
keeping them in now seems like the right course of action. I will say that the next couple of weeks are gonna be kind of busy for me on the mirror front. We've got a couple of meetings scheduled amongst the CEOs around what the costs are gonna be, what the operation is gonna be. I don't have a specific answer, and I'll come back to this when I get to operating budget,
Mhm.
but, this is something that we're trying to get a better, firmer grip on, because everybody's involved in budget. And we would like an answer, so, stay tuned, but it seems like for now, the triaxle is the way.
Okay.
Moving on, I know we've talked about pavilion curtains at Parmalee, those are staying in because, of course, that's what we committed to doing with having them go up to the town for approval as a capital project. The funding source would still be under the Parmalee activities account. And really, after it leaves our hands and goes to Board of Finance's hands, should it stay after Board of Finance? It's up to the town whether to go on.
So the funding source, excuse me, was the Parmalee account.
Yep.
But it's accounted here in our,
It's at the bottom,
Are you looking at capital?
yes.
The bottom box, the bottom
Bottom box.
section, funding source, Parmalee activities
Got
account,
it.
56,000.
okay,
Yeah.
so it's coming out of there. Okay.
Moving on, we have the library pavilion. This is that they made a couple of Neighborhood Assistance Act requests last year. And talking further with the library, we came to the conclusion that this is a capital project because the town will have to maintain this. Fortunately, we did that after the budget was approved. Unfortunately, they've been slow getting Neighborhood Assistance Act grants, so no work has started on that. So we're going to the town for approval on this. That is the estimated cost. And as with the Parmalee pavilion curtains, its funding source is primarily Neighborhood Assistance Act.
And do we
grants.
assume that if we don't get the neighborhood assistance grant or the library doesn't, that the project does not move forward?
I believe that's the assumption, and I'll confirm that with the library. Immediately following that, the library solar array, there's a bit of discussion going on, with the library about that, just lay some groundwork. The impetus for this was that we have some very generous, residents of town who would like to donate, at least some startup for that. And so we're moving forward to figure out what cost would look like and, move forward with that. We would like approval from the town for that because it is again a capital project. And it would be changing the structure of the physical building we're responsible for. But we expect that it would be covered by, the donation, depending on the size of the system. There's some particulars we need to figure out.
Will we know this before this goes to town meeting?
Hopefully.
Because you used a phrase, you said startup.
I probably shouldn't have used the phrase.
Okay,
startup.
so it's gonna be, we anticipate the donation to cover the full amount of the initial installation. Okay.
That's capital. That's kind of where we left off. Everything else has been on there from the beginning.
Sure.
I forgot to mention for the fire company, we removed the station 2 line and the water hole line. The water hole line is properly in the fire company's operating budget, if you'll recall.
Okay.
And the station 2 line has been removed from their multi-year planning, or at least, committed to.
Mhm.
That was that in year one at this, to this?
It's been removed to, someday in the future, we're gonna have to renovate Station 2, that existence.
So if I go all the way to the bottom of this,
So we're looking at
where we've got a
1.4.
1.4, but then we assume a transfer from $1 million, we're short by 209.
No, we're to the good,
To the good by 209.
because there's a couple things there's, the first thing is the estimated fund balance and capital reserves that I
Right.
think we're gonna have at June 30th.
Okay,
So there's $500,000 there. The Parmley 56, the neighborhood assistance, so those are two direct offsets, and we have the million, and we have LoSiP funding of 81.
so that's 1.67, right? Is that what you're adding?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
So-
what we should have.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so what would happen was, that you could back off on the annual transfer, which would impact the operating budget, but I would
Sure,
recommend against it. I think we need to get back into the habit of
yeah.
transferring a
Yeah, I
million, because
agree.
that seems to be the number that we average without the huge projects like a building or a fire station.
Yes,
And so it's a good discipline to have in place. And it just means that we won't need to use as much of the capital reserve fund balance.
And one thing I did not mention because I haven't received a response back yet is, if you'll recall, in the conversation that we had with the fire company, I mentioned the Urban Act grant that we received. I haven't heard back about whether we could apply to the storage building. So that doesn't take into account that funding. I will push again on that to make sure that we get some clarity on that. But that is another potential source of funding for at least the storage building. So, because yes,
yeah, sure.
now is a good time
Yeah,
to move to multi-year, because we're now looking at the future and the costs are big. So, obviously throughout the fire company's future planning, we have turnout gear replacement. As we move forward, as I'm sure you guys remember at our meeting with the fire company, price is going up a little bit, just from changes to the materials used in the equipment, the removal of some things like PFAS chemicals. Given their deleterious effect on the human body. We have a couple of engines way out in 31, 32 and 34, 35. The big unanswered question, and we're still waiting on the final design for it, is the needs assessment and what the cost would look like for that. And where that exactly that would lie in part depends on the costs. There is probably state funding for construction of something like this. I think the federal funding might be a more open question mark at this point. It is emergency safety, so there's a possibility that it would be used for that. But stations are expensive. Deep River, Middlefield have just gone through, are two towns that have just gone through constructing new station, renovating a station. And they were, I think, in the neighborhood of $10 million, if I recall correctly.
they bonded that though, right?
I would imagine so. I'd have to double check on that. Otherwise, not much has shifted around from the fire company. We might see some cost increase moving forward for some things. For example, hoses are occasionally made in Canada. So, we'll deal with it as it comes. But again, this is more for keeping track of estimated costs and potential projects. So I think that's an important thing to keep in the back of our minds as we moving down to highway departments, pickup, large dump and plow and sander are the next two major purchases, followed by a small mason dump.
Where did we leave off
on the tri-axle roll-off, so I know,
That's in the current capital year.
so, right, so, but I know in our meeting when we met with the Director of Public Works,
Mhm.
we were kind of chatting about, with the kind of the uncertainty of Mira, and would we have to drive to someplace that's besides Essex, Bridgeport, and there was some concerns, whether or not, this was the right apparatus for it. And I think we even discussed a little bit about, what if we fully contracted,
Yeah.
the trash hauling out? Did we kind of land on any of those?
Yeah, I haven't done any of that analysis. He might have started it, but I didn't make any progress on that.
Because if I can recall correctly from when Mr. Mello was discussing that there was some concern that this, let's say that Essex
Mhm.
no longer wants to receive our
trash.
trash, would this triaxle roll-off be functional to going to Bridgeport or, wherever we have
Trying to
to
think
go
of where.
to? Just because, I mean, we don't want to spend 325 and then come to
Mhm.
find out like, oh.
Right.
I know there was some discussion, I think Wayne, you were there,
I think at
Talking about
this
you can
point though,
make-
aren't we pretty sure we have two choices, either the current arrangement with Mara
Yeah,
and an arrangement with Essex is on the table.
yeah.
So it's looking
Essex
less
looks-
likely that we would have to drive somewhere else.
Exactly.
And that
Okay.
we talked about the secondary market, if it made sense
Yeah.
to sell it,
Yeah.
would be a good thing.
Sure.
But as far as that study
Okay.
about, having the extra, not having to use one of our men to drive and then
Yes.
they'd be available to do other things.
Yeah.
We didn't
Okay.
carry it out that
Right.
far.
Okay.
Yeah, this is one of those things where as time has progressed, sticking with the triaxle keeps making more sense. And there is the possibility of adapting it to other uses. So, but as also mentioned, resale value is high for something like this. Moving on, we have a bunch of road projects. This is more just, as long as we keep to the schedule,
Be okay.
be okay. I will draw your attention to 26, 27, because of somebody driving a truck through Abner Lane. We now have to replace one of the bridges.
Like a big truck. Like
We
a-
don't know exactly what kind of truck, but we know
Weird.
that it broke the bridge
Oh,
and
jeez.
Yeah.
And we've known about this.
we've known about this for a while. It happened.
Okay, yeah, I remember hearing about
So it's
that.
gonna
Oh.
require some engineering.
No, it only
So
happened last year.
engineering to rebuild it.
To,
and
to
all-
decide what has to be
A
done.
loaded
and-
wrecker, triaxle wrecker towed a triaxle dump truck. So you're probably 200,000 pounds. Went over a bridge and all it is stone. It's just laid stone, that's all it is.
I remember hearing it.
No, I see what's during my tenure.
So it requires engineering and.
They're here 10 years ahead.
So there'll be
Sure.
engineering
Design,
costs that'll probably hit
engineering.
the operating, but the actual capital project, when we think will happen, we'll know what that number is. And it'll happen in year 2 or 26,
Yeah,
27.
26.
But the road is still possible.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I asked
I don't know
this.
if I can- I just.
Or is it safe?
I didn't want to.
Yeah.
Get out of place. Keep in mind that, I don't know if anybody realized that it's a town unimproved road. From a certain point to North Chestnut. So that's why the road is only one car wide, it's very minimal passable. So we only maintain it up to the state
Right.
park and that's it. We do some bare maintenance, but wintertime, that was always closed in the winter anyway. But it's been left open the past few years, but that's this literally, it's just a bunch of stones laid across the. road.
So no risk of
That we've done-
collapse,
we've done repair.
structure.
Yeah, it's been repaired.
And it's holding up fine since.
But if another triaxle, towing another triaxle goes over,
Then
then you might have some.
another.
The biggest
triaxle.
problem we have-
Throw those both
Oh,
triaxles.
The biggest problem with what we see from a road maintenance standpoint is it all diverts back to electronics, GPS.
Yeah.
Sends anybody and everybody over if it's listed as a road.
Yeah.
They're gonna drive down it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to limit what traffic you have on that road. I'm surprised the triaxle wrecker and truck made it to where it was.
Yeah.
So,
And to that point, actually, I put in a request with the state, to designate that road, through, no through truck road. Sure. So, because like Wayne, you said,
Yes.
it's a dirt
Cause that was
road.
gonna be my next, is there anything we can do to prevent, that from happening in the future? Because, here we're on the hook for $500,000.
Yeah.
If we fix that and then a year later, similar things happens again.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things where, and I'm supposed to hear back from the state this week or next on when they can get out and do the survey, and hopefully the response to the survey will be, why the hell did you keep this as a
Yeah.
route for through trucks?
Yeah.
So, we're just gonna have to repair it, to modern standards. I think this, if I recall correctly, talking to Mark, this one survived a washout that took out every bridge and then some Yahoo drove over it in a truck.
Mhm.
But that's the only recent
Like,
addition to the
yeah.
road schedule.
Okay.
Moving forward, transfer station, there's some,
Put the canopies in, right?
yeah, that's in the current year.
Yeah.
And, some undefined upgrades, new compactor in 28-29 is expected.
I did have a question on the canopies. Where exactly are they gonna go?
So,
And what do they, like, we do have winds and things like that, is it gonna be able to kind of stand the weather and the elements and?
so to the second one, yes. To the first question, where you put the bottles and cans, and then also where you put the,
Bulky waste only.
oh, is it just bulky waste?
The other two are covered already. They're covered containers to.
Oh, that's
recycle.
correct. You're right, you're right.
Because there
This is
some
just for the
coverage
bulky
there
waste.
already.
When you're facing a transfer station, two cans that are closest to us
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
right now,
Yeah.
that are open tops, they
Okay.
have to be covered.
right,
And this
I
is,
just knew I didn't want to catch it before, it was the other ones are already covered.
right, I was gonna say it was
Sure,
both
sure, sure.
sides are covered because you don't, because
And you
I'm
have the sliding
thinking in my
doors on.
thought, yeah, you have the sliding doors on the cans and.
It's only the open top containers.
Right. So,
Okay.
and
and
that's
this
to
is what
prevent
the
water
intent
to,
of, when it rains, to prevent rain from
Right.
filling these.
that's a, MS4, violation, if I recall correctly. And also from a practical standpoint, if it freezes in the winter, then ice is more difficult to haul than slush, I guess.
Did they get like an actual quote for that? Or it seems like $100,000 is a lot to
Yeah.
cover
For canopies.
30 foot.
This was engineered, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Seems like that's pretty
I
extraordinary.
think it's in the ballpark for what other towns have done. So, yeah, it's,
And it's a lot bigger than you think it is.
Yeah.
Each can is over 40 feet long.
Okay.
yeah,
So it's enough coverage that it's not like you're putting an umbrella,
no,
like
no,
it's.
to your question of, is it gonna resist? It's gonna resist the
Okay.
rain and the wind, very well.
Okay.
We're talking steel. Yeah. Okay. Moving forward, next year in Park and Rec, we have playground renovation, plan for 125,000.
Mhm.
This would be at, Belton Park. As you may recall, there was discussion about the equipment at Sheldon.
Mhm.
Keeping that in place, I think makes sense. I think some of that equipment is as old as I am.
Sure.
So, a refresh is in order.
Yep.
There is some perspective stuff. Lights at Rocco is one that is
Yeah.
something on the possibility list. It would have to be discussed, and I think there would have to be a zoning change or a variance for, Rocco. But this is something that we're seeing more use of ball fields, and we are limited in their usage at, during the nighttime. And of the parks, Rocco is the one that's not really in a residential zone. So that's the one that makes the most sense. Parmalee, obviously, we have some more minor improvements to trails, discussion around patio extension will come next year. And then the rebuild of the red barn is out in 29-30. None of this has significantly changed. I'm just kind of hitting the highlights here.
Which red barn? Drive in to the right there?
It's not there anymore. I mean, it's the red barn. The one that's, the one that had to be demolished.
Okay.
I think that's always been,
Yeah, there's, in the master plan, there's a call to rebuild it at some point.
Okay.
So it's not,
There's one. when
It's
you
not the
drive in,
one
it's
that's
beautiful.
crossed.
It's not that
It's-
one.
It's gorgeous.
It's not that one. It's not the one that was renovated.
Yeah.
It's also not the little one. Actually, I don't
Off
think that
the-
one's red.
Yeah, like the stone or something, like that one.
Yeah, I can't remember the names of all of them. I know of the barns when I see the barns.
so just a clarification question. So this 55,000 for the pavilion curtains, this is coming from, is it,
Yes, it is
it
that
says
one.
55,000
Correct.
here. Okay.
Correct. Year one is the current, or the
Okay.
upcoming fiscal year.
Yeah.
Moving on, general municipal facilities, we have cemetery rebuild, Edson rehabilitation this year. Information technology, that's an ongoing process.
Mhm.
To be perfectly honest, I think the town could use a little bit more investment in information technology. However, recognizing that, I think it's also important that we kind of focus, take stock, and come up with a plan for how to integrate it all and in one go, rather than kind of patching everything in together. When I have some time, maybe I'll work with Tom, Reggie, with CTCom to figure that out, but that's a matter of finding time. But it is one of those things that we do need to keep in mind. The other major expense upcoming is the drainage improvements for public works. That one is kind of been put on hold because of the PFAS situation and the need to remediate PFAS here on campus. And so I want to keep it in that year, depending on some of the other work that we do on the town campus. We can also use it as a test case for the remediation plan. And that would hopefully also be eligible for drinking water state revolving fund money.
So a thought did pop into my head just now, and this is based on where, so for the steel storage building bay for the volunteer fire company, where is that gonna be? Where are they,
So discussing with Chief Darren,
it's not gonna be.
No.
It's not down in Public Works?
No.
Okay, cause my thought was, 'cause for whatever reason, I thought that maybe it was there, and if
No.
it was, the drainage, would that be but if it's not gonna be there, then.
right, yeah, I see where you're getting at with, kill as many birds with one stone as you can. The thought right now is right
So like-
behind,
Like where that antennas, where all that equipment is, right over here.
yes, kind of. Yes, basically, there's the field back there. I want to make sure that there's no leaching fields in that area before we do any of that. But that is kind of where it would sit. We would also have ready access to the diesel pump up here, so. So that about covers it. We do have that $10 million out in 3031 of the big Station One town campus auxiliary buildings. But that's, more to keep us on the radar of what that might be. Questions on the multi-year? Theoretic.
One thing that, just always kind of just pops into my head and I don't see it here. How are we? I know it's one of these issues, what do we do with PFAS? How do we keep moving forward? We still have a lot of homes on Wolf Hollow that has filtration systems
Right.
one is getting put into KES.
Yep.
How do those pieces get incorporated, into here? Because
They're not in the multi-year, they're not in the capital, and the previous boards had decided to have a line item in the operating budget, which is down near the end and funded at $1 and just track the expenses there, with the idea that there will be some
Right.
funding,
so
grant
that's
funding to
really just
offset
what
it.
we're doing at the moment,
That's
is
what
we're
we're
just
saying.
kind of,
Capturing those, paying those bills, paying them out of the general fund, tracking them against $1 line item, and then absorbing it with fund balance, with the hope that we'll get grant funding in place.
So if I just look at sort of a year or two, right, so this year, that number of 1.463 matches.
Yep.
The 1.4, but then if I look for next year, 1.7 were expected, and if we save the 209 and $1 million,
Yeah,
a little.
we have to start making
little
choices.
light, right?
Yeah.
For,
Yep,
for
maybe,
next year,
yep.
is that
Right.
fair?
Yeah.
Okay,
Or a whole bunch of projects come in under budget this year,
something.
and then that.
But the way it stands right
Yeah,
now on
yeah,
paper,
Right,
the
we're
logic
exactly-
you're
we're
using
about
is exactly right,
500 light
exactly
for
right.
next year.
And to that point, and to bring up Eric's most recent favorite subject, bonding, that's one of the reasons why Board of Finance is considering that sort of bonding program, because there are years where it is lighter. So for example, you go out to year 4, it's 969,000.
Sure.
Trying to figure out what the appropriate level of bonding and smooth out that curve
Yeah.
is the goal.
Because it's tough to do these
Dips
dips and
in,
valleys, and then obviously you don't want to create these cliffs.
right,
If you keep pushing this stuff. up,
right, exactly.
And somebody sitting in this seat 10 years from now.
And the other part of it is,
Be left with a big.
and the other part of it is, we do have to decide, okay, are we doing this project?
Correct.
So, some of this is wants, some of it is needs. I would.
Yeah.
I would put, turnout gear as a need.
Yeah.
But, other things might be, okay, we don't need this year, or is this really suitable for
Mhm.
us moving forward?
I want to make a point about the process that we go through to approve this. Doesn't have to be approved by Board of Finance before it goes to town meeting, but what I suggest is that this board
Hmm.
doesn't finalize it until the Board of Finance is done with their work, in case they affect year 1. That way, year
Yes,
1 will
right.
always tie out. So when they're done, I would like to take it to town meeting at the same time we take the budget. So we'll
Right.
have this approved by this board before the budget goes to town meeting,
After fine.
but after Board of
Agreed.
Finance and after
Yeah,
the public
agreed.
hearing, in case they make any
Agreed.
changes after that.
Yep.
Okay.
Moving forward, into operating budget. Talked a lot about operating budget, and for your clarity, we were supposed to have a meeting on Thursday. I'm sorry, you got last
Yeah,
Thursday.
yeah.
I'm sorry, you guys couldn't make it.
It's okay.
What I did was I held a,
you did that too, okay, then I'll feel bad. Okay.
There was no meeting.
there was no
Okay. All right,
meeting,
okay.
there was no
There was
meeting.
a-
I basically
something.
did a first selectman, all right, we're gonna meet with the
The
committees,
committees or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, That's fair.
to discuss the priorities.
it's fair.
So I have notes. I will give my notes to you.
Okay.
Purpose.
And you met with
Library,
Harmony-
Parmalee, and Park and Rec.
Okay.
Okay.
Are
those
Yeah, so
conversations or requests reflected?
yes, so
Okay.
there is some reflection in here, but let's take it, straightforward. Not much has changed in general government.
Okay,
There is something of a question mark in probate court. This is related to a redesign of the space in Old Saybrook's town hall, because that's where the probate court lies. They're trying to figure out something that works, and so this is probably gonna be just a blip for the current year, and then it will go back to their previous amount.
More modest annual contribution.
Exactly.
Right now, the number we have, I got a confirmation yet today in today's mail that that's the number.
Okay, yeah. There's been some back and forth on it, but, it's more of a matter of how do
Yeah,
we say we're
that's
paying
fine.
for this? Moving on to Board of Elections, most of these costs are related to early voting and the experience that we had last year. I would caution that these costs are also estimates. Because there is talk in the General Assembly about changing the allotted number of days for early voting. Since the state constitution was amended to allow for no excuse absentee voting. There's some discussion about reducing the number of days that are required to hold for early voting.
Any state support coming down for?
There is supposed to
Early
be in the budget.
Next year?
I believe there is. There was supposed to be also last year and we got. I want to say it was like $2,000.
That's what I was gonna say. It was very modest.
Yeah. And that was a theme across the state of, they were told that, municipalities across the state were told that they would be held harmless, implementing early voting, and then we were fortunate in that, Laura Blaha said, okay, the state's never held anybody harmless, so we're gonna budget for this based on expected numbers. And budgeted for it. And this is a reflection of that as well, and lessons learned.
Because now moving forward, pretty much early voting is gonna
Here to
be
stay.
here to stay.
Yeah, it's a question of the number of days as opposed to whether it will continue.
All right.
The other next big increase is transfer to capital reserve. I think we all agree that that makes sense. Assistant assessor versus assessor's clerk, this is a change that we made in the current year that is being more formalized. The new assessor's clerk started last Monday. And so things have been working out well.
And the things that you're highlighting right now,
Hmm.
these aren't changes from the last.
No, the blue
Thing that-
highlighting indicates
I've
that those
seen.
numbers actually came from the various departments or agencies.
I'm just hitting the
And
highlights.
But it doesn't mean they've
Yeah.
changed from,
Yeah, he's gonna
Last
do that
time that we
verbally. We're
spoke.
gonna do that.
Right.
No, we're doing that.
I'm gonna, when I get to that, I'm gonna get to that, but I
Okay.
just want to hit the highlights so
That's
that, you know,
fine.
if there's
Yeah.
any questions. You know, I'm trying to answer the
I'm
questions
okay.
before they get to you. So, town council, I'm gonna jump down a fair bit. This is related to legal expenses. We are in mediation right now, so hopefully these costs will go down in the upcoming year. That's all I can say on that matter at the moment. So, we're moving forward with that.
Did we, to go back just a little bit, because I just saw this here, grant writer. Did we have that last year?
Yes, there's always
Yeah.
been $1 in that line
Okay.
item since I started here.
Okay. Okay.
I've never had an expense in that line
Do
item.
we
It's
have
just-
it?
No,
Okay.
No. Grant writer is whoever sits in the first selectman's chair.
that's,
Okay.
One of the hats.
Yeah.
Not even a fancy one. I am going to move down to, postage and meter rental. This is a change, posed by our new tax collector. Rather than doing a lot of the
What
work.
line are you looking at?
I'm on page 3 of 9. I've moved.
okay,
middle of
whereabouts
the page.
Where on the page?
Yeah.
Middle of the page,
can operate,
right above operation and maintenance.
Okay.
A little bit farther down,
got it, I see it.
a little bit farther down, Eric.
Ah, okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah,
Thank
I
you.
saw where your finger was.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
This is a change, brought because Abby, did some analysis and sending out the mailing in-house versus contracting somebody else. It makes more sense to contract somebody else. Next up, town property casualty cyber insurance. This number goes up because we are purchasing cyber insurance. There is an expectation that this would, there's an expectation that this will help, our insurance costs by making us safer. And so, this is an estimate. This is the first year that we're going in with cyber insurance. So, but it is recommended by.
This will be our second year,
our
25,
second.
26, but 24, 20. I'm sorry. Yeah, what year are we in right now?
We're 24, 25.
We, town voted to use ARPA funds for the first year, so we're doing that. So we do have cyber insurance in place right now. We're also working quite diligently to put a disaster recovery plan related to cyber crime in place. So we're working on that. And that
Hacks the towns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever.
takes
Counts.
our
Can't do
takes-
business unless you give,
Bitcoins.
got it.
So we're doing our homework there.
Yeah.
And what the idea is that if, once we put this in place and have this discipline in place and, you know, review it every year and train our employees, that it will help reduce the insurance costs.
I'm gonna go to page 4 of 9. This is the big one. Moving down the list a little bit. Resident trooper assessment. So this takes into reflection the correct number from the state for the assessment of the trooper program, and adds an additional trooper. So this would be an increase of $145,676.
And that's a real number.
That's a real number.
Well, as real as a state
As real
projection
as the
would be.
state says it
That's the
is.
number they project, but then on
They do
June
their thing.
29th, they'll send us the real bill. But this is what they think for 25, 26.
And then the offset on the overtime, you know, because we did have that discussion, is reflected
Yeah.
there with the
Yes.
minus 20,000.
Yes.
Got it. So we make up a little bit of it there.
Right, a little bit. It is still an expense.
Yeah.
And that was the consensus of the board to add that after or
Yes.
during our
It was.
conversation with.
It was.
Snow removal, everyone's favorite topic. We have a request of 206,000, which is about where we landed last year. And we're basically on target this year, but again, you know, it's dependent on the weather. Who knows what the weather will be next year? If you know, please tell us.
Okay.
Then moving forward, through highway other, there are some minor changes, a little bit of an increase for security, and then on the next page, 6 of 9, under other, we are including, some of the discussion that we had with Chris about security upgrades, OSHA compliance training.
That's where that is.
That's where that's gonna lie. for the
Okay.
moment.
I mean, we probably maybe go, as we move through time, we could break that 15 up into different line items
Something
in.
about
Yeah, it wouldn't
safety,
just sit. in
Training, yeah,
training and
Yeah,
safety or something
exactly,
like
but I
that.
thought, we thought that for
Um,
purposes of this first year, we should show it as a decision that we're making. to
Correct.
get
So the
invested
Board of
there.
Finance would have that
Yeah.
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
They would
Right.
know what other.
as opposed to it being
Stands.
broken up under 5 lines and then, well, we can adjust this one down, this one down, this one
Yeah.
down. So, trying to keep it all together makes no sense. Moving on, municipal solid waste. So we bumped this number up again based on the discussion that the CEOs have been having and some movement on that. Because of what might be happening with Essex Transfer Station. This gets back to the next 2 weeks, I'm gonna be having a couple conversations with them about what will be working, what won't be working. And so that number is still gonna be a little flexible, but I would not expect it to go up. I would expect it to go down if things change. So again, this is being as conservative as we can. Let's see. Otherwise, there are 2 other changes that we made, page 8 of 9. And actually, we didn't come to a consensus on these changes. The first is Parmalee Farm Committee. So as part of the discussion around Parma Lake Farm, I had originally asked Scott, when he had brought up Scott Hawkins, the former chair,
Mhm.
when he had brought this idea to me back in,
chair now? Do they have a
yes,
new
it
chair?
is Tim Gannett. He is the interim chair.
Chair.
The idea behind a large part of this increase, the 28,300 of it.
Yeah.
Was what would it cost to have somebody who did a lot of the maintenance, mowing stuff on site as a person?
Mhm.
Just to get a picture of what that would look like for a year. The question kind of is this the year to implement that? Part of the discussion that I had with Parmalee was, we're kind of in use a fancy word, liminal space or a transition between an all volunteer model versus
Managed.
a managed, or, somebody having enough staff on public
Oversight.
works or whatever that looks like to
Mhm.
do that sort of work. Having an idea of what the cost is makes sense. I don't know if we're at the point where it's necessary. Tim made the point more bluntly than I was trying to make on Thursday, that they're getting old. And every time I see Terry driving the golf cart, I get scared.
Mhm, mhm.
But I think that's more a Terry thing than a golf
Right,
cart
right,
thing.
right.
And
So the-
how much of a volunteer model can we hold on to as we move forward?
So this 43,300,
That's what they asked.
that's what they asked for.
And they want
Correct.
that, that's a person.
That includes a part-time,
Part-time,
non-benefit person
non-benefit,
or
part-time
contracted,
Person,
yeah, or
or
contract.
contracted, you call
Right.
it landscaper.
Yeah.
Something.
And
And
then,
I don't think that there was was there a position description put alongside this?
No, it
So
was kind of
I mean,
a,
it could also it could also be used to outsource the mowing.
yeah,
As
Yeah,
opposed to
sure,
bringing a
sure,
person, but they
sure.
might
Yeah.
have a vision of something else, but I think before we would do that, you'd wanna see a
Yeah.
Some
fleshed out,
kind of what it
job description.
entails.
for
Yeah.
so where did because through all of this, it appears that there's only two BOS adjusted. Where did the minus 28,300? Come
so
from.
that's kind of, I was pushing that 28,300, and so that's why I'm opening up for discussion now.
Well, the 15 it nets out to 15 on Parmalee, and they're coming in at 14 right now. And they're at a $10,000 budget,
Okay,
and I'm projecting them to come at 14 something.
okay.
So that's where the 15 came
Okay.
from.
But they want 43.
But they wanted 40
Right.
because the first selectman asked them to include what they thought it would cost to
Right,
not have volunteers do all the work.
yeah.
Okay.
So where are they now? So when you met with, and I'm sorry I couldn't make it to that meeting on Thursday. So how does Tim feel and what does the Parmalee Farm Committee feel? Because even before my time, I kind of understand that there's this balance with Parmalee where
Mhm.
basically you have volunteers doing a bunch of stuff, but like, as with everything,
Still a
we all get
town.
older and uglier, but,
Yeah.
so, you know,
My-
is this, is this 43,300, necessary for Parmalee to, given their aging staff?
It's an interesting question. It gets to.
Do you know what, so I mean, I guess let me ask more concretely. Did Tim provide any sort of context in what they would get? So let's just do hypothetical and let's just say, okay, you know what, let's just give them the full $43,000.
It would be a lot of mowing.
Okay.
A lot of mowing,
Basic claims.
yeah, like the stuff you associate with the groundskeeper, like maintaining facilities, cleanup, that sort of thing.
So I guess timing is unfortunate here, but I can understand Parmalee and I can understand Tim's need or their need or want or expression of a need to do this,
Mhm.
right? Because volunteers and But then if we were to do something like this, wouldn't it make sense, it's a town property.
Exactly.
Wouldn't it make sense to take that money, put it somehow as a line item in that budget, in the public works budget? Whether it's,
Or park and rec.
or park and rec, whether it's a contracted service,
Hold on,
whether
let's
it's a
not,
person.
let's not open up that battle.
Yeah,
Let's not,
but
yeah.
it's somewhere else in the public works section
And-
Yeah.
where it's part of their now
Responsibility.
responsibility and
So-
so the funding to do that.
Cause that's my.
And that's one of
Get
the
it done.
reasons why I have been pushing for that expansion of public works. And,
Sure.
You know, we're taking a step towards that. We just sent out the letter for the fourth guy today.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I give that hesitant, well, are we there yet for this? I would say
So
no,
what
but
does Public Works do there currently, if anything?
no.
Snow plowing,
Grading, snow plowing.
grade the
So
driveway.
no like mowing or
No.
none of that?
That's
They've
what-
asked for some, you know, of the like heavier duty
Sure.
mowing to be done.
Okay.
But
But since it's a town property, right, I would hate to sort of parse all these things out with work and people. I would just put that. I'm not sure now is the time to do that, but eventually, as
Yeah.
I said, put that money into the
And-
public works thing and say, hey, whether they want to contract that out, whether they want to hire a part-time person, I don't know, we can
Right.
talk about that. But then
and
it's their responsibility.
Did you
to take care of
receive
that as
any
property.
like, any sort of like, numbers or, any sort of, again, kind of thinking about, if
I don't
what
have
they
the,
requested for 43,000,
I
you
don't
know,
have the
was it
request in
specific,
front of me,
like-
but it is broken out somewhat in the request. And I think both of you have it in your
Yeah,
emails.
yeah.
It's just, I can't recall.
From Jim, there was a breakout of the 43.
Recall, but I could.
I'm trying to recall the request, but if it was broken out a little bit more, but might be wrong. So I'd have to look at what I've got.
because, also too, partly, if I can remember from prior years, even before when I was on the board, they've always kind of requested, more than, generally what we've given them.
Mhm.
So, one concern that I have is, again, are we getting to that point where do they need that financial assistance? And again, it is a town-owned property.
Right. Really, it's how much resources do we want to devote to this versus relying on volunteer? And are we coming up by the point where it makes more financial sense or just more time sense for the people that we have and what we need volunteers for? Because we have to fill committees, we have to do a whole bunch of other things.
Sure. No, I agree with you, but I would like formally committee to sort of work with Chris to say, okay, here's what
Yeah.
here's what it would entail.
Yeah.
Here is what the maintenance of
And
this
he's made
property
that reach out to
would-
Tim
would
and
look like, whether it's, and then
this
between
was
Chris
all.
and Parmalee committee, you can kind of ascertain what is necessary.
And this was all kind of part of the conversation that we had on Thursday.
Mhm.
And so I have my form of notes that kind of I used to recall things, but I'll share them with you as we so let me ask this question.
Okay.
Are you comfortable then with that adjustment of 28,300?
At this point, I am.
Okay. Recognizing, of course, that how we handle Parmalee and move forward is something that we have to take into
Oh,
consideration and,
Absolutely.
what the investment is that we make into the
Correct.
property. Because, it is a nice property. I drive by there every day. People use it every day.
Every day.
You want to maintain it and
Great.
make it look
Good
Good.
for my garden tonight.
freaking golf balls, but you can't do that at Parmalee.
Uh,
Or any of the
But
time.
there's definitely something there, and it's definitely something there to sort of chew on and be able
Right.
to, a year.
And
from
that's
now,
why-
have that kind of solved.
And that's a big reason why I asked for this to be included in their request,
Mhm.
so that we had a number to sink teeth into and have this discussion on. And put into the town consciousness of, okay, this is what it would probably look like to maintain, even if it's just split into
Yeah.
public works or a contracted service.
And so that would take probably to 50,
15,000,
because they're at around 14 right now.
correct,
And they covered their expenses. Okay.
correct,
So it gives them a little bit of a tiny bit of a buffer.
right. And, you know, costs are increasing,
Sure.
we need to keep that in mind.
Okay.
Alright. Moving on to one more item.
Did we already go past the library? We're leaving the library. Or were you about to talk about that?
I was about to talk about Committee on Aging, but I'll talk
Okay.
about library.
Yeah, because I was looking, the Board of Selectmen at this point have only made 2 adjustments, and then I thought,
That
But,
doesn't make
right.
it. No, well, technically, we readjusted back the resident state trooper that
Mhm.
I had
right,
initially.
right, okay, so that's an adjustment, but, so the library is,
Oh, and,
they're at 4.1.
Yeah.
Where are you? What page?
8 of 9.
oh, did I move pine? Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah,
move past
because
library.
there was
Oh,
no
yeah,
adjustment,
yeah.
and I don't know, the library was part of the group that came to
That I
the
was there.
non-meeting.
Yeah,
Got it.
It's not,
here, give me 2 seconds and let me grab my notes.
I think you were okay with this, but you as a group need to talk about it.
Yeah. So part of the discussion around the library has also been about, you know, the use of their endowment for covering costs. And so I'm hoping that this year there's a bit more clarity provided to Board of Finance on that matter, because that's been a point of contention between library and Board of Finance. It kind of falls into the same boat as a lot of these committees where you have this outside volunteer organization that's kind of on the outskirts of the town, and we want to be as clear as possible about what money is being used for in town. So having these
Mhm.
alternative forms of
Yeah,
revenue coming in.
exactly. Just makes
is-
it hard.
Yeah, and there's also been, going back to when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, as my middle school
Mhm.
history teacher said, you know, stories about, okay, well, the endowment was gonna be used for this, and it was gonna be used for that, and and so there's history attached. But there are, a number of other things that are impacting their budget this year. For example, the ebook audio platform that they're using, they've had to limit how many times people can use it per month. And the cost is based on the number of users. And so they saw the bill go from 200 a month to 800 a month.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the service is named Hoopla, which
Yeah.
I found funny. But I don't listen to audiobooks, that's what.
Mhm.
There's been increased maintenance on the boiler. This is a relatively new boiler, so I asked them to check if it was still under warranty. And they haven't gotten back to me yet on that, but some of the costs were related to, impeller and, also the control panel, so electronics, which is
Mhm.
pricey. Though these were predating the last few months. Though electronic prices have been through the roof for the last year. I've been trying to build a new computer and haven't bought it yet. Also, they're seeing a decrease in interest.
So they're basically requesting an $11,250
Yes,
year.
yes, and the point was made in their request that that is only, I'm gonna get the numbers wrong, but it's a small increase over their last year's request. But then Board of Finance adjusted their request down. We had kept it flat, or we had not adjusted their request.
Got it.
And so,
Okay.
so it's the kind of the same thing, but the big killer
Wow.
is, so,
What do we, so what is the town, yeah, go ahead.
so books for adult price, books for adults, the price is increasing 10%, and books for children, the price is increasing 30%. So that's another big cost driver. As explained, now go ahead.
So, because, probably two of the most hotly contested, pieces are Parmalee and the library.
Mhm.
There's a lot of emotion that goes behind those two. And, just like with any other, kind of human endeavor, it kind of tends to split down the line, between, political affiliation here. So,
Not as much as you might think I found, but go ahead.
So, I'm just thinking that, and I said this last year too, that, if, there's a real loss, I feel for the books, like I feel for that, like I notice things are kind of getting more expensive. So, my question is, so what do we do for both what sort of service, like landscaping service do we do both for the library? Do we cut the grass there? Do we,
Yes,
Yes.
so
and
to-
plow the snow.
So does the town, do we cut the grass and we don't cut the grass at Parmalee? Is that correct?
That is all volunteer done.
All right.
But I
But
mean, first of all, the agreement with the library is the town pays for what happens outside the building, the library pays for what happens inside the building. Parmalee, it's not that we don't do anything, it's that,
Right.
when they need it, because they get equipment, they buy equipment.
Sure.
And
Right.
or buy mowers and we repair them and it's
Yeah.
gasoline and
Yeah.
it's the model that was put forth
Yeah.
when we first
Right.
acquired the property, so.
Okay. Yeah.
It's, I don't think you can't really compare them that way.
yeah, it's kind of a hard comparison because we have a responsibility for the exterior, as Regina said, Gina. I don't know why I called it Regina.
That's okay, it works.
I created their own.
Yeah, Parmalee is,
Yeah, and
works,
and it's
outside
evolving.
works,
And that's,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it has been from the beginning. In fact, if when we're not so exhausted, I think that they need to come back with their master plan and make sure there's meat on bones there.
yeah,
And the town needs to consider the master plan.
I think the last time the master plan was updated was 2018, maybe.
And it was more of a retro,
For Parmalee.
normally, and it was, they looked, sort of went retro, they looked into the past and reported what they did do. As opposed to,
What is the plan for the future?
there's language about improvements. Well, let's get them on the multi-year and let's look at it
Yeah,
every
let's
year.
flush it out.
Yeah, so we can have it.
Some of that is trail improvements and lighting,
Sure.
but like, what does that
Farm
mean?
for $400,000.
Yeah,
And I will remind myself that they're all volunteers. All of our
Absolutely.
committees are volunteers. So when we put, this is some heavy work for them to,
Absolutely,
the,
huge.
the planning.
Yeah.
It's not
Huge.
easy, so I don't, mean to be disrespectful or not
Absolutely.
recognize how much work it is.
I mean,
But
the
that's the
other,
part that's missing, is there's really no, we gotta get the wants and needs on that multi-year and look at it every year.
and to that point also, to bring it back to the library, there is paid staff at the library.
Yeah.
And so, is it the
It's a
same?
tough comparison.
It's a tough comparison between the two.
So, just kidding, are you comfortable with this 4.1
Personally, yes,
based on the conversation?
based on the
you had with the
conversation that
director?
I had with the library, based around the big point of contention between the library and Board of Finance, and where I would lean kind of more towards, well, maybe they shouldn't get 4.1, is if the endowment wasn't being used as they say it is being used.
Mhm.
And so the concern was that they were only drawing funding from the interest, whereas according to the library, they're actually drawing from dividends and interest.
Mhm.
So,
So I guess, because if we send this to the Board of Finance, it goes with like a narrative. Correct. So I would be comfortable supporting 4.1, but maybe spend a sentence or two
justifying it.
in that narrative, justifying it or the conversations you had with it.
Yeah.
Or some of
Let me
the
make a note.
topics that were discussed with it.
I mean, the big focus of the narrative thus far, just to cut in real quick, is gonna be safety. and
Totally, as we talked about.
Best fit of
But
the
I
future.
kind of want to come back, you know, to again, to Parmalee, you know, because, you know, it is a town-owned property, you know, it is our responsibility. With you know, the library has over 4.1%, you know, 11,250.
Right.
While we're cutting 28,300 from.
But from a request, though,
Right.
not from the current
Sure,
budget.
yes, yeah, correct.
Which,
Correct.
and to that point, let's say we keep them at 15,000, which is what we kind of consensus to at this moment. That is a 50% increase in their operating budget for this year.
And I think, I'm sorry, but I think if there's language in the narrative supporting this period of transition,
Right.
I think that's the way to go, because in this case, I don't think we should rush to be hiring a person.
No,
Right.
I think we need to I think we need to consider a transition, like having the mowing done either by contracted
Right.
out or picked up by highway department, but transition. We've been transitioning all along
Mhm.
with this group, and this is another transition. I don't think we just immediately pull the trigger and hire a person.
no, I agree.
Yeah, and it also comes back to, are
So
we
is that what-
specializing a person versus having a general person available?
Or do we need a person? Can it be contractor or something?
Right.
Yeah,
I-
all that stuff. That's why I think that's a conversation with
And
Chris and Parmalee.
Yeah, and that's a conversation that can go all year long, leading up to next year's budget.
I get where you're coming from on this, but it is one of those things where we have a set model for the library and we are kind of in a flux period for Parmalee, in my view at least. Do we want to discuss the next position that we're probably not going to add?
Committee on Aging.
The Committee on Aging. And I think our consensus last Monday was basically, it's much like Parmalee right now. It's not quite the right moment. Obviously, there is a need, and we said this last year. I want to point out that this is a reduction in the request from last year as well.
Sure.
But as we discuss the assets that we have in town.
Yeah,
We don't have a senior center. Pulling together other things. I understand where the Committee on Aging is coming from. We just discussed Parmalee and they're all volunteers. Well, the Committee on Aging is also all volunteers. And this is, for a lot of these volunteers, it's almost like a part-time job. I don't know how many hours, I'll use a different example, Jim Duffield puts into Park and Rec or any of the Park and Rec guys.
Yeah, I
the
agree.
recommended adjustment was just cutting out the person.
Yeah. Then adding,
But adding the additional for programming and
Yeah.
clerking.
I support that.
Recognizing that there is a need, that it should be supported in some fashion. And if that also means that I put in more hours to, assist with
Yeah.
finding grants or sending emails, like
We can,
we can do that. Yeah.
yeah, I support that.
Any comment on that? I know it's one of those.
Yeah, so I think at some point, Committee on Aging, they're probably gonna need, that as as they kind of develop and move forward. Again, like my concern is looking at these town organizations, it's that, we certainly have a responsibility to these town organizations.
I will say also on Committee on Aging, some of their work, and Joan Gay was unfortunately not able to make this meeting because she intended to give us an update on their affordable housing plans. But to that point, planning and zoning is also working on affordable housing. So, some of what they have discussed and brought forward is being taken up by other committees. I cut you off, I apologize.
No, I think I'm,
I just thought of planning and zoning. I forget where they lie in the budget, but, there is a $3,000 increase that's related to developing the plan of conservation development. And this is a years-long process where, the work starts now, but our plan of conservation development is due in 2028. Yes.
6,000, it's 3 for the consultant and 3 for work.
Yes, so,
Okay.
that's stuff that will ramp up as we move forward.
All right.
So I'm gonna ask a question,
Yeah.
and I don't expect an answer. Are you guys comfortable with this at this moment?
Like-
All of this, the
you know,
capital, the multi-year.
again, I'm gonna come back to Parmalee.
Okay.
And, you know, again, it's like, you know, even before my time, you know, here, you know, there's always been kind of like a, you know, a need, they've always had a need there. And I'm just looking at, you know, cutting it by, you know, 28,000. I know we're giving them an extra $5,000, you know, here. But I would really like to see if we can restore that funding line to them, to give them back that $28,000.
My only point would be that it's less back and more perspective into the future. That it is a request, and it would be personnel. And that's the only point I make. I think it is a good point that we need to think about as to what is the cost of maintaining Parmalee. And it's a good price point, for that. But
Because if it was to all go, so if all the volunteers left Parmalee, like they all decided just to, hey, I'm done. You know, what would we be on the hook for? What would that cost us?
We would probably we'd have to mow it.
yeah,
Mow it, and we continue to pay the, you know, the internet and the electricity,
which
and we would probably cancel the events.
at least for time till we figure out what to do with. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that as like a,
I mean,
you know,
that's-
broadsheet, like,
Sure.
So would it be safe to say it would be more than this 28,000 that they're getting?
I think the answer is we don't know.
we don't,
Right?
yeah,
Is that-
it's. You have to remember that 28,000 is more tied to the maintenance of.
Sure.
The. Grounds, less the planning and so forth, that goes into it on the events.
And currently, right now, Public Works doesn't do any of that
They
right now.
plow the snow,
just plow the snow.
they'll patch the driveway, they'll do some heavy lifting on things if time permits,
Sure.
if there's a tree crisis or a boulder crisis, they'll
Mhm.
step in if they can, but yeah,
So.
but not mowing, but they don't,
But that,
they don't mow.
mow the Sheldon Park, we don't mow here, that's a contracted service, So, and that's kind of to the question of, do we start taking on that responsibility in the future as well?
And what we're also not addressing is the fact that we run this other set of books for the activities.
So-
With where that $55,000 is coming from, that's
Right.
built up over time. So, you know, I still argue that the whole thing needs to be blended into either have it all in the operating budget. We can track the revenue,
Mhm.
just like we do for all the other departments. It's easy enough to track the revenue related to a particular department. But then you're really seeing all of the expenses related to the property.
Right.
Whether it's just electricity or it's a labor for an event, it's all in one place. So you didn't even talk about that. I mean, they have this other fund.
Yeah.
And those checks, the other point I'd like to make is that those checks are signed by one signer as opposed to 2 signers. And in other words, the small special accounts, we don't put, you
don't
put them
put
in that
2 sign-
folder.
Okay, I
Yeah.
understand.
So you're not seeing it.
Because I never
Right.
see.
I
No,
see.
I
you're not
never-
seeing it.
I
No,
never-
there
You
is
see
reimbursement.
you see it in the reports that I send you every month.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
But my point is, you don't have a clear picture of what it costs to run the show over there, because you've got operating expenses and you've got, which is one line item, operating
Yeah,
expenses,
yeah, yeah.
and then this
Other
more
things.
complicated set of chart of accounts in the special fund.
Right.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, like they saying that it's a town property. There may be some maintenance there that needs to happen.
Right.
And it may need to get transitioned to something like we do here, whether it's contracted, whether it's a person. I'm not denying that at all, but I think this timing, if this was happened, this conversation sort of came across or just 3, 6 months ago, we could have had that conversation with Chris and Public Works can be part of that conversation. Tell us like, okay, here's what's necessary,
Mhm.
whether we contract this, whether it's a part-time person, whether it's whatever that may be. Just to
Yeah.
take $28,000 now to hire a person.
But is
to do
is that for certain?
whatever.
Do we know that that
No.
28,000 is for a person?
No
It
idea.
would be for a groundskeeper is what I discussed with Scott. So, mowing, some of the minor maintenance that, could be done by
Yeah.
a person who's there.
So what did Tim convey on Thursday to you? So like, cause he probably saw that, what did he say when it was like, oh, 28,000? Like what was his kind
It,
of?
it was the same.
Okay.
Basic gist of this would be what it costs to have somebody come and do some mowing. Can't remember the exact,
Like what, the description of the person, like,
right.
Yeah.
But it's a person or what it would take to do that sort of work.
Well, you know, I think kind of the aging of the committee.
Yep.
I guess we can just, we can finish it here, but, and so I do, feel strongly about it,
Mhm.
so, I would like to make a motion to give them back or adjust that $28,300 and give it back to them.
Yeah, and I only take issue with the word back,
Yeah.
but it restore the request.
Yes.
Can I make that friendly?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion was to restore the 28,300 to the request of the Permanently Farm Committee. Is there a second?
So. Apologize to my colleague here that
It's okay.
I'm unable to second that
Okay.
at this moment,
Okay.
just be based on the sort of the lack of sort of fully understanding what that is now. I also understand, and I do agree with you, that there's something there.
Mhm.
That I do think there's a transition that should happen, and I think it should happen pretty speedily. Right, and with our public works, because it is a town-owned property, and what that means, and if it's an emergency, if it's somebody comes to us and say, geez, this is really something. And we need to figure this out somehow. We've done that before, sort of move line items around and things like that. So if Chris and Parmalee come forward and say, this is something that really needs to happen. I've looked into this, I've had those conversations, and this is what it would sort of cost to go through the summer. And I'd be more than happy to have those conversations. And we've done things like that and moved line items around and moved.
I'll make the really macabre point that, if Permanently Farm had everybody at their meeting and a meteor struck, we wouldn't just let the parcel fall into disrepair. I think the insurance would cover the cost. Well, actually, if they're meeting here, then yes, we would absolutely
Mhm.
repair the building. But we'd also repair permanently if that happened. My whole line of thinking was when I made put the question to Scott, previous chair, and put the request in was along the lines of what Joel just said
Mhm.
of, what does it look like it will cost to do this? Recognizing aging volunteers, the difficulty in finding volunteers. And give us something to think about. I'm not gonna make any promises, but I think it is something that we need to think about, especially as we expand public works and do that pipe work. And I raise these questions now because I guess I want to ask, are we comfortable moving this budget forward? And I apologize,
No,
I'm not going to second the motion either, so for want of a second, the motion dies on the table. That said, I am happy to give us all some time to review and discuss these, talk to other people, have other people talk to the both of you.
Sure.
And I would like to meet maybe Thursday.
Yeah, I think so. Give us.
Are you free actually Thursday and don't have
Yeah,
a,
I don't have a high school, let me just make sure. Thursday the
I'll have to
13th.
put it on my calendar this time,
Yes,
because if it
please.
doesn't go on the calendar, like,
Yeah, it give us, 72 hours to either have conversations with.
Yeah, and then if we're
Yeah.
lucky enough to have you three make a decision on Thursday, then we can put something together over the weekend and have it ready to present at a special meeting to the Board of Finance.
on
So we
Monday.
should have been presenting it to them tomorrow, but we're not,
Okay.
they know that too. They know. that.
Yes.
because we discussed, we basically
Doing like
said-
another,
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
a,
Yes.
just a
And that's-
three.
that's why I
after we
asked
get
that
the-
question, like,
Yeah.
And this
We
is,
could do it
so I'm not
tonight,
gonna get
yeah.
a different, this is
But-
the one.
No, well, there'll be the condensed version as well.
Okay.
Where
But
you're
the
not,
detailed, this is
right,
the one I'm reviewing.
right,
from
but
now
number
until
wise,
Thursday.
yes.
Okay.
We might clean up a
Fair?
comment or
Yeah.
two. I'll get rid of the shading, that kind of stuff.
Okay, but number wise.
Yes.
Yeah. We do have two, yeah, this is a long meeting, but this was expected to be a
I don't
long
think you
meeting.
did your minutes yet. Are you gonna do it at?
We did it.
different-
We did.
We did already,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
did
yeah,
the
yeah.
minutes. Actually, before I move on from the budget, I'm sorry,
More business.
I do have more business, but, I just want to also relay some of the conversation that I had with, Robin Brennan of HK Park, or HK Recreation. Their request is down this year. My question was to her was, is this sustainable? What's driving this? And so she believes that for the near future that is sustainable. However, the reason for it was Killingworth has been funding our contribution to HK Recreation at the level requested for some years now. Haddam has not been. They have continuously cut the request. I think the last 2 years were $25,000 and $25,000 and $25. On Thursday, she found out that Haddam's Board of Finance is cutting them back to zero again, or down to zero.
Got it.
So that is an open question mark. And
Okay, thanks.
just to provide some more information on that.
What are we currently giving them? What's our support? to
So
them
her
currently?
request was $17,275.
That's on the operating.
Yes, page 8 of 9, under recreation.
So.
It's,
That was services.
no, go up to recreation. It's the big highlighted yellow line.
Ah,
and then the line right above
yeah,
it.
Okay.
yeah. I see.
17490, that,
Right below that one.
oh, I see.
So
So
145, 765.
17,275.
Okay.
Yeah.
Below
Yeah,
here.
Yeah,
So you were saying that Haddam.
zeroed
down
that
to
one.
Zero.
Yes,
Zeroed it out.
zeroed it out. They will not be giving any money to HK Recreation this year. And so
Doesn't that beg, then they would ask us for more money, why are they asking for less money?
they believe that, one, it's not fair that Killingworth bear the cost of
Noble.
funding this when Haddam has continuously undercut. Well, you say that's noble, but in the case of Youth and Family Services, there's been a back and forth.
So is this, so With that update, so this is still their request to us
Yes,
here.
that is,
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
there's no change in that request,
Okay.
but I wanted to provide some of the background.
That's fair. I
for why
never
it
had
dropped
a conversation
36
about
cents.
got it.
I've tried to provide some background for some of the other things. I've probably butchered some of the other
No, you're good.
background.
All right,
Gotcha.
good deal.
Okay. So think on the budget for the next 2 nights. I'll schedule a special meeting for Thursday. It should go quicker. Unless we want to do another line by line. In that case, moving on to new business, Neighborhood Assistance Act. So, this is just to remind you guys that the Neighborhood Assistance Act is coming up again.
Mhm.
We spoke a little bit about what it kind of entails with the library and their requests for program or for funding through that.
Mhm.
Just as a brief reminder, it's corporations get tax credits to give nonprofit organizations money.
Similar stuff to what last year.
Yeah.
With the lack.
So we'll be putting out the public hearing notice and moving forward with that sooner rather than later, because I can't remember what the deadline is, but the deadline's coming up. I think like May, June. Legislative update, I have a bit more written down for that. Apologies for talking so much. So there is potentially a action item, and it has to do with the portion of the law I provided both of you tonight. So the legislature last week is allowing towns to adjust the assessment rate for vehicles registered in town as property, and that is assessed as taxable property.
Mhm.
Previously, the legislature had it capped and can't remember the number, up to year 1 at 85% the manufacturer's MSRP.
Okay.
This, if you recall, when we started the budget, there were 2 things that negatively impact our grand list, the veterans exemption and this change to the motor vehicle assessment.
Mhm.
The legislature is allowing us, the Board of Selectmen, to make an adjustment to the assessed rate of the vehicles and increase it up to 90%.
Mhm.
Basically,
Tax people more.
exactly. The legislature is deigning to allow us to do that
By
Um,
5%,
by, well,
basically every
yeah,
chunk is
yeah,
up by 5.
exactly. There's been discussion within the local communities around the state about this and whether towns are going to take this or not. Within the local region, some are, some aren't. For example, Westbrook and Essex are not. Clinton is taking the option of increasing the assessed rate. I've asked Shauna to run the numbers on
Yeah.
what it would look like. So part of it is a lot of communities were negatively impacted by a large degree outside of what the state expected the impact to be when they made this change. The estimation that they made for Killingworth was pretty close to on the money.
Okay.
So we were not as negatively impacted as other towns have found themselves. So we have time, we have until April 15th to make the
Okay.
decision for this year. It does,
I just,
Yeah.
I do want to caution,
I know,
that, I mean, mill rate is probably gonna go up.
Yeah.
I agree.
We have
Well-
the school
Well,
coming down. I know,
with you.
I know
Okay.
Andy said it could stay flat. I'm not so optimistic
Yeah.
about that. So I
Right.
think
I understand.
with this, I think it's like, I think it's just another
Yes. And so, that kind of fits in with the conversation that that has been happening among state lobbying organizations like CCM and COST is, yeah, thank you, state of Connecticut for allowing us to do this. You could have just done this on your
Yeah,
tax
right.
assessment as opposed to imposing it on the town.
Us.
So
But we don't have to do anything right now.
We don't have to do anything right now. I want to get more better numbers for you.
Yeah, that would be helpful just to see, but like again, like my
I'm
gut
cautious.
reaction is like, gosh, we're already gonna ask people to pay more
Yeah.
taxes, like
Yes,
they would.
I agree 100% on that. And,
And if anything, I mean, I don't know, let's talk about getting rid of. Because.
there's been talk about
There
getting
has
rid of the
been.
car tax
For a
since
while.
I was this
We
tall.
all know your car's not an asset.
So, the second change that is in this bill, this is the bill that, also, allocated additional funding for, education cost sharing. And so the other change it makes is to the veterans exemption, which I just mentioned, and it tries to narrow it, but it does so in a way that the towns have to be the bad guys yet again. And furthermore, based on a discussion I had with Stonington's first select woman, Thursday, it probably doesn't do what it should have done in that, a veteran who, is living in something like Beechwood might lose this exemption versus the
Yeah.
ones that everybody's concerned about in Stonington who,
Yeah.
live on the water and have $2 million house, they might be able to keep it. So, and again, when we talk about the veterans exemption, the state estimate actually for how it would impact our grand list was about accurate. Even with this change, you would probably only remove one veteran from the exemption.
Okay.
And, these are people who have earned this exemption. The point still stands that if the state is making these exemptions for people on property tax, it's probably the state that should be financing it through the state's budget. Because the state has $1 million surplus. Actually $1 billion surplus. So those are two changes that I thought you should be aware of that were passed last week. In addition to that, the ECS funding that was in this bill was originally line item vetoed, but let me rephrase that. After some negotiations with the legislature and determining a funding source, that
Mhm.
funding is now moving forward. The governor had originally proposed this sort of ECS funding increase, but it would take into effect in the upcoming fiscal year, not in the current. So this is basically shifts the schedule a little bit forward. It's still not enough to cover all of the ECS funding needs of the state, but it is what it is. Continuing on that, just quickly, CCM Cost and Rivercog are continuing to testify and lobby for the town. I've submitted some testimony regarding some changes that would impact HK Rec. But, there are a lot of ideas out there in the legislature this year. Some of them are good. For example, there is a bill to allow municipalities to do legal notices on their website, which would cut down on costs to the towns and given.
The 21st century.
Yeah, so that work continues, but until June 15th, I want to say, we still have to watch what the legislature does.
Okay.
All right. That does it for me. Public comment.
Yeah, three quick things, just reiterate what you guys are talking about. One, you have a line item in our operating budget for public works for required training and manuals. I didn't know if you saw that.
Mhm.
We use it presently for updating my handheld computers. I didn't know if you remembered it was there. Two, if you can clarify, the small pickup with plow was supposed to be in fiscal year 25-26. Did you move it to 26-27?
I believe so.
So it did get moved,
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
because it was scheduled to be 25-26.
Mhm.
Okay. Third, to your asking about looking into possibly contracting out garbage. I don't know if you've given a little hit, about the history of
Yeah.
town. We did originally contract garbage out a long time ago, long before hauler times. That is how we've gotten into hauling our own garbage. So just keep that in mind of when they were talking about this whole thing.
Yeah. And that was in the back of my.
Okay, I
mind.
just
So
didn't-
it didn't come up.
I just wanted to ask about pickup because I have it was the budget and I didn't know it got moved. That's fine.
Okay. Saw that there was a hand up earlier, but I think it was Eileen. Okay, you should be able to unmute yourself. Let me see. I cannot unmute you from here.
Call. But you just chatted, can she call?
If you're going to call somebody, yes.
Echo here.
All right, Eileen, you're on.
Oh, sorry, we're trying to have my computer for some reason.
No worries.
No.
I'm just gonna, sorry, can unmute, so this is the only option. I just wanted, if, to just take a second, I've been obviously listening to all the conversations about Parmalee, and I just want to clarify a couple things. Obviously, the model that existed for the last 15 years was, we got some donated equipment, Parmalee got some equipment, and the town bought some equipment, and obviously the mowing was done by volunteers. That was the original model. Obviously, things change over the 15 years. The request that has been put forth by Parmalee is not for a person, per se, to hire somebody specifically to do all this type of work, that we would have a Parmalee person. That's not what this is about, in any way, shape, or form. Also, just to go back to the original agreement with Parmalee many, many years ago, was that the town would provide 6 days a year for maintenance at the farm by town crew. That does not happen. Not to say that they don't plow the snow, they do. Not to say that they don't come drop gravel off when needed. Yes, they do. But it's supposed to be 6 days at the request of whatever the Parmalee committee says needs to be done, whether there's some heavy tree work or whatever it might be. That does not happen. So we're at the point now that the request came, obviously you saw that we're over budget on a lot of the operating expenses, which is going to continue. Well, yeah, we hope they don't, but chances that they are. The request is for the anticipated need this season for mowing, that our volunteers, we try constantly to get additional people to come out and mow the property. We all know that the property is used extensively, and the mowing is a critical part of that. The additional fee is for mowing, and again, whether that is a contracted person, you hop on the contract, if that was possible, that Park and Rec uses, or that the town uses, it really doesn't matter, and or other maintenance or repairs to machinery that can't additionally be handled by the volunteers. Because again, not only the mowing, but a great deal of the oil changes, the small repairs to all this machinery has been consistently done by volunteers. So again, that has become harder and harder to do. So just listening to this, I just wanted to clarify that this is not that Parmalee was coming forward with a request for a person that would be, like I said, their sole job is Parmalee and all of these needs. That is not what this is. So I understand what you're saying, but this is not a new thing. This conversation has been going on for quite a while, that we're getting to that point that, it's harder and harder, for many, many things. So I understand maybe you feel a little uncertain, but this is a now problem. We're hoping that it's not, but it is. So if we can't get the volunteers to do the mowing this spring and summer, there needs to be a place that those expenses, whether it's the town who's going to come over and do it consistently, or there's going to be another contractor or something like that. That's what this is. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Eileen.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Is that it, Eileen? Can we let you go? Okay, okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
I hope that made it through to the speaker, Jamie. Hopefully I caught it. Anybody else? It's almost 9 o'clock, despite what the clock says. Yeah, I did change the clock today. I knew it. All right. In the interest of getting us out,
Yeah.
you guys got anything else?
See you Thursday.
I'll go.
I look
Yeah,
forward to it.
Yeah,
Have
I'll
good
see you guys Thursday.
conversations.
Yeah, I'll see you guys Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah.
All right,
Fair?
3 quick things. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You're good. You're good.
Work is continuing on the barn. We're just over 1 week. It's coming along nicely. We're gonna have an inspection on Wednesday with the engineer for some structural stuff, but It's proceeding. I picked out a color for the roof. It's charcoal. I think that's the closest one to what's on the roof right now. Also, the work at Eric Hour Park is continuing, and we're over 50% completion at this point. So get that finished up soon. Finally, there's expected to be a planned power outage at the town campus on Friday, either this Friday or next Friday, so the 14th or the 21st.
Okay.
If you recall, a couple months ago, a car hit a pole in front of town hall. This is related to that, finally getting around to replacing the transformer. And so we should be on generator power during that time,
Sure.
but
Who knows?
yeah, exactly. Wayne's crossing his fingers.
And then-
I'm half tempted to
We'll
just
be on
close.
generator power, I'll let you know.
Boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm actually debating whether or not to close on Friday just to be on the safe side, because
Sure.
who knows
Who
if
knows?
something goes wrong.
Yeah.
I'll send out a constant contact if I make that decision.
Okay.
But I wanted you to be aware of that.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you, everybody. It's
Alright.
been a long meeting.
Yeah.
Good night.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night, everybody.